There's a scene in Over the Hedge that probably didn't catch your attention as a child. RJ, the raccoon, opens a map and shows the others the new neighborhood that humans have built. In the middle of all those houses, a small patch of green, the only part of their forest that remains. RJ tells them they don't have to be afraid of the neighborhood, because right there is the entrance to the good life. Junk food, air conditioning, and television. But since the animals can't read, they don't realize that the green patch they're standing on is marked with a note: to be developed soon. In other words, no matter how hard they try to survive or enjoy the good life, the animals are doomed to die. But that warning wasn't for them. It was for us, for the way we're living. A bag of nachos in a vending machine. RJ sees them and instantly craves them. As a raccoon, it would be natural for him to be looking for fruit, nuts, or something he could find in the forest. But no, he prefers the nachos. They're tastier, come in flashy packaging, and are ready to eat. Besides, the forest is no longer there. It's been replaced by a highway. So even if he wanted something natural, it wouldn't be so easy to get. He puts in the money, but it gets stuck. He takes a deep breath, opens his backpack where he has everything he needs: a golf club, a dinosaur teether, and even a boomerang. He tries everything, hits, pushes, shakes, but the nachos won't fall. He's utterly frustrated. Even though he once had to search for fruit or nuts in the forest and take his time to find something, RJ is now used to fast food, easy, ready to eat. So when he doesn't get it instantly, he gets desperate. The world he lives in now has taught him that everything must come immediately. RJ looks up, sees the hill, and gets a very bad idea. He tries to resist, but his stomach growls. With the fishing rod, he climbs to the top, to the cave of Vincent the bear, who's hibernating. RJ goes inside and finds paradise. A red wagon full of junk food, donuts, cakes, popcorn. At first glance, it's comical. A raccoon and a bear obsessed with processed food. They're wild animals, and it's clear they shouldn't be eating that. It goes against their nature. But if we apply that idea to ourselves, to humans, the contrast becomes uncomfortable. Because we, too, shouldn't be so used to that kind of food. Our nature is also made for simpler things: fruits, nuts, and real food. And yet, just like RJ and Vincent, we've fallen under the spell of processed food. Tastier, easier to get, packaged to catch our attention. RJ tells himself he'll only take what he needs, but ends up taking the entire wagon. He doesn't do it out of hunger or necessity, but because the food is too tempting. Even though he already has enough, he can't leave it behind, and he's not the only one. Vincent also stockpiled far more than he needed. And the parallel with us is more than evident. RJ in the cave is like us in the supermarket. We don't need to buy the chips, cookies, cereals, or sodas, but they're there, and we crave them, and we end up tossing them into the cart. That's how our homes and pantries end up like Vincent's cave, full of things we don't need but couldn't resist. Just a quick pause to say that if you're enjoying this video and haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. It would mean a lot and really helps me keep making more videos and content like this. Alright, let's get back to the story. RJ's about to leave when he sees Vincent hugging a can of papabritas. He can't resist. Very carefully, he swaps the chips for a cup of coffee. Vincent stays asleep. Everything's fine until he opens the can, and the sound wakes Vincent. RJ's craving for the chips was so intense that he couldn't wait to leave the cave. He had to open them right there in that moment. And that no longer speaks of hunger, but something more like addiction. Vincent greets his friend warmly, but when he realizes what's going on, he tells him that, unfortunately, he'll have to eat him. RJ tries to negotiate. He hasn't taken anything yet. He can leave it all and forget it. But unintentionally, he pushes the wagon. It rolls downhill, and a car crushes everything. Vincent is furious. The raccoon tells him he can get everything back. If he lets him live, he'll retrieve every item just as it was. The bear agrees, but gives him a deadline until the full moon. He has 1 week to find everything, from the red wagon to the blue cooler, and of course, the papabritas. If anything is missing, he will hunt him and kill him. RJ has no idea how he's going to do it, but he has no choice. The central theme of the movie is natural life versus an artificial, modern, and processed world. The raccoon no longer looks for fruits or nuts. Now he wants nachos. The bear doesn't collect honey, but donuts, cookies, and mini coolers. They don't eat out of hunger, but out of a manufactured desire. Almost addictive. The story seems to be a clear critique of how we've strayed from the natural, the simple, and what we truly need in order to live an artificial, comfortable, and tempting world, but also one that's emptier and less nourishing. RJ goes through every dumpster and begins to lose hope, until he sees a billboard. El Rancho Camelot, your gateway to the good life. The image gleams. A huge, spotless house, a happy man by his grill, a smiling woman with a blue cooler full of sodas. They seem to have it all. And RJ knows that's where he'll find what he needs. A large house with a yard, a grill, a cooler, and people smiling as they enjoyed packaged products. Today, we see it as something completely normal, even as the model of the ideal life. But if we stop to think about how humans have lived throughout nearly all of our history, and what we truly need to be well, is that modern life really the answer? Homo sapiens emerged around 300,000 years ago, and for most of that time, roughly 290,000, we lived as hunter-gatherers. That means we were constantly on the move, following nature's rhythms, seeking the basics to survive: water, food, shelter. We ate what we gathered or hunted that very day. There were no reserves, no excess. Life was lived with only the essentials, a few tools, some clothing, and little else. And most importantly, we lived in groups, in constant contact with other people. It was in that environment that our brain was formed. The way we think, feel, get stressed or relax, all of it was shaped by that lifestyle. And even though the world changed, our brains stayed the same. And according to evolutionary psychology, we still function as if we were living in that distant past. It seems we live in a world we weren't designed for. If we look closely at suburban life, that lifestyle of large houses, yards, personal vehicles, and all the comforts, we can see that, although it appears safe and pleasant, it doesn't necessarily benefit us as a collective. We live in isolation, each family in its own house, each person in their own room, often more connected to a screen than another human being. We live sedentary lives. Between the car, the computer, the phone, the TV, our bodies barely move, and both our physical and mental health are affected. We live overstimulated, notifications, screens, noise, food everywhere. Our nervous system, which was designed for a much simpler environment, becomes overwhelmed and exhausted. We don't eat out of hunger, but from anxiety and boredom. And because there's no effort involved, there's not much satisfaction either. And while in the past, the purpose was clear: survive and care for the group, today, many people live without really knowing why they do what they do. They have comfort, but no purpose. And that also affects mental health. That artificial, isolated, and sedentary life that once promised us happiness now seems far from delivering what it once promised. And the problem is that we've already been deeply conditioned. How did we come to believe it was the best option? One of the many answers lies in marketing. Advertising sold us the idea that having a big house, the newest grill, the greenest lawn, the most luxurious cars, the latest phone, vacuum cleaner, or smartwatch was synonymous with success and happiness. And little by little, we believed it without questioning it. Later on, I'll continue exploring this. Spring arrives, and Vern, the turtle, comes out of hibernation. He stops to admire the colorful flowers, the trees full of life, and the dragonflies flying all around him. He wakes the rest of the group: Hammy, the hyperactive squirrel, Stella, the skunk, Lou and Penny, the porcupines, along with their 3 children, and Ozzie and Heather, the father and daughter possums. They're all hungry. The grapes and nuts they stored for the winter are gone. Now they must go out and look for more. Unlike RJ and Vincent, who are used to the artificial, to hoarding, to immediate gratification, Vern and his group live a much more natural life. They do things like follow the rhythms of nature. They gather food through effort and eat only what they need to survive. They store just enough for the winter, and when it runs out, they go out to look for more. It's not an easy life. At times, it's fragile, and it always depends on what the environment allows. But they stay organized, look after each other, and face things together. They live in motion, connected to the earth and to their community. The group begins to collect food for the next winter. Their goal is to fill the log to the top. RJ watches them and comes up with a great idea. Meanwhile, Hammy the squirrel runs in with a warning. Something strange has appeared at the edge of the forest. A huge hedge barrier. The animals are nervous. They've never seen anything like it. What could be on the other side? As the group's leader, Vern takes a deep breath and decides to cross. He emerges into a suburban backyard. Everything looks clean. Decorative fountains, gleaming benches, freshly cut grass. But what catches his attention the most are the animal imitations. Flamingos, dogs, geese, all made of plastic. Turtles and bears made of cement. Rabbits and cats trimmed out of bushes. Everything looks natural, but nothing really is. In modern suburban life, nature is no longer experienced in a real way. People no longer live with it or respect it as something living. It's only used as decoration, arranged, trimmed, imitated, so it appears close, but without having to deal with its inconveniences. This is exactly what the philosopher Guy Debord criticizes in The Society of the Spectacle. In the modern world, we no longer experience reality directly, but through images and representations. What matters is no longer the experience of self, but the appearance. It's no longer about living, but about seeming to live. Frederick Jameson, another philosopher, makes a very similar point. He argues that we live in a culture that has lost depth. Everything is filled with pretty images and flashy styles, but none of it has real meaning. There's no story behind it, no message, no connection to something genuine. Why did they place flamingos, a turtle, or a bear in the yard? They likely don't mean anything. There's no authentic connection to these animals. They're simply there because they look nice. After all, they give the illusion of a life in harmony with nature. That is exactly what Jameson criticizes, a culture that remains on the surface, where visual appeal matters more than content, and where things no longer need to make sense, as long as they look good. RJ climbs a tree to get a better view. From above, he sees a full picture, a suburb with no end. Meanwhile, Vern is attacked by a lawn sprinkler, trips over a hose, falls onto a toy cart that sends him flying into the street, and he's nearly run over. When he returns to his group, he's shaken. That new world is horrible and dangerous, but then they discover the worst part. That world has replaced their forest. The oaks and berry bushes are gone. They have no idea how they're going to survive. As if sent from above, RJ appears. He says he knows exactly what's going on. It's a new neighborhood, 22 hectares of paradise with air conditioning. He shows them a map of the area. Hundreds of houses are perfectly aligned, and right in the middle, a small green patch, the space where they are. RJ assures them they have nothing to fear from the neighborhood, because right there is the gateway to the good life. He can help them fill their lock with food long before winter arrives. In fact, they could fill it in a week. Vern is uneasy. His tail starts to tingle, and when that happens, it means something is wrong. The group deeply respects Vern's tail tingle. RJ tries to convince them with words, but when he sees they're not working, he pulls out a bag of nachos, and from it bursts the most glorious explosion of cheese. The animals are mesmerized. They've never tasted anything so delicious. It's crunchy, salty, addictive, and RJ tells them that's nothing. There's much more in the neighborhood, and they can get it all. At this point, and with everything we've discussed, it's clear that RJ represents modern consumerist life, and he's trying to seduce the animals into adopting that lifestyle. In that sense, he acts as kind of an advertisement. He promises them that if they do what he says, they'll have everything they desire: safety, happiness, peace of mind. Sociologist Robert Goldman explains that in today's society, it's no longer products that are sold, but ideas, emotions, and lifestyles. It's not about what you're buying, but about who you could be if you buy it. Modern marketing disguises consumption as happiness. It doesn't sell things, it sells promises, success, love, belonging, tranquility, and that's exactly what RJ does. He doesn't just offer them nachos, he sells them a magical solution to all their problems. Has it ever happened to you? Have you bought something believing it would complete you, solve your life, or give you a better, happier version of yourself? I'll read your comments. But there's a detail no one notices. On the map, RJ shows them the area where the animals live, and it's marked with a note, to be developed soon. That is, this last piece of forest is also going to disappear. The irony is that the lifestyle he promises them, because it's comfortable, pleasurable, and abundant, is the very one that's destroying their home. And the same thing is happening to us. We love modern life, having everything instantly, with little effort. Food is ready in minutes. Packages arrive the next day, air conditioning, and personal cars. But the constant consumption and production that sustain this life are precisely what seem to be pushing the planet to its limits. We're so focused on what gives us pleasure in the moment that we forget about the long-term damage we're causing. RJ proposes a plan. He'll guide them, teach them how to enter humans' yards, how to get food. Vern still feels uneasy, but the group no longer listens to him. They're amazed. They want more. And so, that very night, the plan begins. They leave the forest and approach the yards. But, unlike what Vern had seen, now it looks like paradise. Dancing fountains, lights that change color. RJ walks on water, and even the grass looks greener. They see a car, and RJ explains that humans use it to get from one place to another, because over time, they've lost the ability to walk. They ask how many humans fit inside, and RJ answers, usually just one. He gives them a quick lesson about humans. Everything in their lives revolves around food. They have devices to order it, heat it, and store it. They pray to it. They work out just so they can keep eating. They take pills when they eat too much. They have competitions to see who can eat the fastest. They use it as comfort, a reward, a distraction. They print it on t-shirts and socks. They dress up as it, and when there's no room for anything else, the leftovers go straight to the trash, a banquet for them. The animals go wild from eating the trash, but RJ tells them that this is just the beginning. They haven't even seen what's inside the houses. He promises if they stick with him, in a week they'll have enough food to even feed a bear. Metaphorically. Right at that moment, Gladys, the president of the neighborhood association, opens her door and spots them. She screams, grabs a broom, and rushes out to scare them away. Everyone runs. That was exactly what Verne was talking about. Humans can be very dangerous. RJ tries to convince them that it's worth the risk, but the animals have already decided they don't want to try again. RJ will have to come up with another plan. It's bedtime, and the raccoon climbs a tree with his backpack. From there, he sees the rest of the group snuggling inside the log, wishing each other good night with affection. Though he doesn't want to admit it, he feels a bit envious. That night, he has a nightmare. Vincent has come for him and is about to devour him. RJ wakes up with a jolt, drenched in sweat, more determined than ever to gather all the food. And then he sees it. A troop of Girl Scouts selling cookies in a red wagon. He returns to the group and changes his strategy. He doesn't come with promises of food, but with something more personal. He tells them he can see what they are. Vern asks, "A family?" RJ replies, "Yeah, that. I used to have one of those." But he can't even bring himself to say the word. RJ represents modern life. Fast food, comfortable houses, gadgets that do everything at the push of a button. A lifestyle designed to make life easier, more practical, and more self-sufficient. But that self-sufficiency comes at a cost. It's made us more lonely. As we've already seen, before modern life, humans lived in a community. Everything was done as a group: hunting, gathering, protection, raising children, solving problems. Being alone wasn't an option because surviving that way was nearly impossible. But with the rise of modern life, especially in the suburbs, that changed. Everyone lives in their own house, buys their own food, drives their own car, and handles their own matters. We no longer need each other, or at least not so closely. The mutual dependence that was once a fundamental part of life began to be seen as a burden. And when the other person stops being woven into our daily life, we also stop seeking them out. We get used to doing everything on our own, and being around others, which, as I said, used to be an essential part of life, starts to feel uncomfortable, even annoying. And so that independence that once seemed like freedom sometimes ends up just being another form of loneliness. And that seems to be what's happening to RJ. He's so used to relying only on himself that when he comes across a group that actually functions as a family, he can't even say the word. RJ lies to them, saying he used to have a home, surrounded by loved ones, a house, a couch, a universal remote control. This may seem like a joke, but it's actually something much deeper. After World War II, in the 40s and 50s, the United States experienced major economic growth. Many soldiers returned home with a desire to return to normal, to start a family and build a stable life. To make this easier, the government offered loans to buy homes and develop new neighborhoods. That's how the suburbs were born. Residential areas with identical houses, yards, driveways, and full utilities. And that's when companies saw a huge opportunity. If each family now had its own home, then each home needs its own refrigerator, washing machine, and television. But to sell all those products, it wasn't enough to talk about their functions. They had to make people want them. That's how a new kind of advertising emerged. One that didn't just sell products, but an ideal lifestyle. The ads showed smiling families, immaculate homes, happy children, loving couples, and in the middle of all that, the washing machine, the television, the refrigerator. Little by little, popular culture began to associate certain objects with the idea of success, love, and domestic happiness, and those images became embedded in the collective imagination. Even today, when we think of a happy family, we often picture exactly that. A mom cooking in a well-equipped kitchen, a dad watching TV with his universal remote, the kids playing a perfectly decorated yard. That's practically the same image RJ sees in the Rancho Camelot ad. That's why RJ's line about the universal remote is so symbolic. He's not really talking about a family, because he's never had one. The only thing he knows about the perfect family is the superficial image society has sold him through advertising: a house, a couch, and a remote control. And because he follows the logic of modern, artificial, and superficial life, he believes that's what defines a family. He doesn't know that, in reality, family is something much deeper. RJ tells them he had the perfect life, until it all fell apart due to a tragic accident involving a lawnmower. Hammy runs to hug him, and the whole group is moved. Everyone wants him to stay, except Vern. But faced with the group's insistence, he has no choice but to give in. RJ assigns Hammy a special mission. He takes him to the other side of the hedge and shows him the target: Girl Scouts. All of them can be his, if he follows the plan. He messes up his hair, fluffs up his tail, and puts cream on his mouth to fake rabies. Hammy runs toward the girls, but they react quickly and hit him with a book. Just then, Vern arrives. Seeing the scene, he rushes to help, but a street sweeper flings him into the air. He lands right in front of the girls, who run away terrified. RJ gets what he wanted: the wagon. The girls run to their mother and, frightened, tell her they've just seen a rabid squirrel. Gladys, the president of the neighborhood association, is alarmed. If animals start showing up, property value will go down. She's determined to eliminate any threat. Meanwhile, RJ gives the group the best feast of their lives. Cookies, sodas, chips, everything they could imagine. He teaches them how to cross the hedge and get more by stealing backpacks, lunchboxes, and snacks. Vern watches it all and feels increasingly uncomfortable. RJ is taking his place, his closeness with his friends. RJ sees a pickup truck go by with a blue cooler. He starts crafting a plan. Ozzy the possum plays dead while the others try to retrieve the cooler from the vehicle. But Gladys acts fast and calls an exterminator. Just as he's about to catch Ozzy, RJ gives the signal and they manage to escape. The plan was a success. The title of the film is Over the Hedge, and on a surface level, it seems to refer to the animals that cross the hedge, enter yards, and steal food. From that perspective, they are the intruders, the ones invading the peaceful lives of humans. But if we consider everything we've seen and analyzed, who are the real intruders? Who invaded whom? The animals were living peacefully in their habitat until the humans came. They cut down trees, paved the land, built houses, fences, roads. They expanded until they occupied every corner, and they forced out those who already lived there. And now, when the animals are simply trying to survive in what little they have left, they're called a nuisance, and they're sent to be exterminated. The real invaders aren't the animals crossing the hedge. They're the humans who built those fences in the first place. Everyone celebrates, except Vern. He can't stop thinking about how dangerous it all is. He knows the humans don't want them there, and he's convinced the exterminator could wipe them all out. But what bothers him most is seeing the entire group thanking RJ. That place, that respect, used to be his. He sees the log full of food and becomes furious. The group has a surprise for RJ. They've prepared a special chair for him, decorated with everything he loves. They welcome him to his new home. RJ is moved. He's never had anything like this. They ask if it's like the family he used to have. He replies honestly, "This is very different from what I had." To complete the surprise, they connect a television and hand him his very own universal remote. RJ is ecstatic, but when he turns on the TV, the first program is titled The Vermin Among Us. His conscience kicks in, and he changes the channel. But the next one says, "You should be ashamed. We opened our door and you lied to us." He switches again. "I gave you my heart and you shattered it into 1,000 pieces." RJ can't take it anymore. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's getting in too deep. He only wanted the food. He can't grow attached. He has to betray them. Suddenly, he turns toward the log and the food is gone. He sees Vern walking away with the red wagon. He's returning everything to the humans. RJ runs after him and begs him not to do it. Vern doesn't budge. They begin to struggle over the wagon when, suddenly, the house dog appears. It lunges at them, the leash getting tangled in the wagon, and the chase begins. The food goes flying everywhere. There's an explosion, and they lose absolutely everything. The group, furious, blames Vern, but he defends himself. He says RJ is just using them. Everyone's outraged. RJ would never do something like that. The raccoon stays silent. Guilt is weighing heavier and heavier on him. Vern insists. His tail has been tingling ever since RJ arrived, but Stella interrupts him. She says she's not going to starve just because his tail trembles, and she accuses him of being jealous that RJ is leading them toward the future. Vern snaps. He looks at RJ and says, "You're just taking advantage of them because they're too stupid and naive." Everyone is offended. Hammy, hurt, replies, "I'm not stupid." Vern tries to walk it back, but it's too late. Everyone turns their back on him. That night, RJ sits in his special new chair. He's surrounded by the closest thing to a family he's ever had, but he can't enjoy it. Vincent will come for him. He wanders off a bit and watches the human's yard. He sees the exterminator installing traps all over the garden. Cameras, sensors, laser beams, cutting-edge devices. Everything is ready to hunt them down. RJ pulls out his list. It's still blank. He's not going to make it. Then Vern appears and apologizes. He says he shouldn't have taken the food, that he just wanted things to go back to how they used to be. He tends to be cautious, a bit nervous, while RJ is brave, spontaneous, and fun. And he admits that maybe the others are right. He is a little jealous. RJ replies, "Believe me, you shouldn't envy me. You're doing the best you can for your family." Defeated, he's about to confess everything when he hears a noise in front of Gladys's house. A truck has arrived. It looks like they're setting up for a party. He can still get everything. So he changes his mind. He tells Vern that he has the perfect opportunity to redeem himself with the group. Vern, who just wants to help his family, agrees without hesitation. They go to the others. Vern apologizes and everyone warmly forgives him. They start planning how to get the food back. The key to getting into the house is in the collar of Tiger, Gladys's cat. So they need Stella. They give her a makeover, trim her bangs, paint her black, and she's unrecognizable. RJ watches them and feels a knot in his chest, but he reminds himself that he has to finish his mission. Stella enters the yard and finds Tiger. She seduces him, takes the collar, and passes it to the others. While she keeps him distracted, the rest of the group sneaks into the house. And there it is, the fridge. Paradise. They empty the pantry, load the wagon. They're almost there when Gladys's alarm goes off. They decide it's time to leave, but RJ stops. He forgot the papabritas. Vern tries to pull him back, but RJ yells, "If I don't get those chips, a bear is going to eat me." Everyone freezes. He was only using them. RJ lunges for the papabritas, but trips, makes noise, and alerts Gladys, who immediately calls the exterminator. RJ looks at his friends, grabs the wagon, and flees without saying a word. The exterminator arrives, captures the group, and locks them in cages. They're terrified. They hold hands, accept their fate, and apologize to Vern for not believing him. Meanwhile, RJ reaches the top of a hill, where Vincent is waiting for him. He tells him he's impressed. It's the most selfish and cruel thing he's ever seen. Classic RJ. He gets the prize, and everyone else gets the punishment. The raccoon says nothing. He watches as the exterminator drives away with his friends. Vincent tells him he's on the right track. If he keeps it up, he'll end up just like him, alone, but with everything he ever wanted. RJ looks at him and realizes that everything he'd wanted, he already had. Then he sees the truck heading down the road. He looks at the wagon and knows what he has to do. He pushes it with all his strength. The wagon rolls, drops in the middle of the road, and manages to stop the truck. RJ runs to save his friends. With the impact, the cage bursts open. The animals are flung out, and the exterminator is knocked unconscious. But just when it seems they're safe, Vincent appears, heading straight for RJ. He begs his friends to let him in, but no one moves. After all, he betrayed them. But Vern sees something different. This time, he's not using them. He truly wants to help. He tells the others that his tail isn't tingling anymore. That's enough. Everyone rushes in to help. Together, they manage to shake Vincent off. The truck goes flying and lands directly on Gladys's house. They think it's all over, but when they return to the forest, Vincent is waiting for them. They run back to the yard, only to find Gladys and the exterminator there as well. They get trapped in the hedge with no way out. Then RJ makes a decision. He tells Vern to take care of the family. But Vern responds, "Yes, but all of us. I'm not leaving you behind." At that moment, they get an idea. Hammy. While RJ distracts Vincent and dares him to jump into the yard, the others give Hammy an energy drink. With total calm, Hammy crosses the yard, activates the exterminator's sensors, and turns the turbo stripper on full power. Vincent leaps at just that moment, and the system activates at maximum strength. Vincent, Gladys, and the exterminator get caught in their own trap. RJ, Vern, and the rest of the group watch the scene like it's a show. They even eat popcorn. They did it. The bear is taken away by animal control. Gladys and the exterminator are arrested for owning a turbo stripper, which is only legal in Texas. Vern says to RJ, "If you had told us you needed that food for the bear, we would have helped you. That's what a family does. They take care of each other." RJ, moved, replies, "I've never had a family before." Vern smiles at him. "I know, but believe me, this is the gateway to the good life." Then they invite him to be a part of it. Hammy runs to hug him, and this time, RJ also tears up, and soon the entire group joins in the embrace. RJ had believed the promise of modernity, that the good life was in the suburbs, in a big house with a yard, a grill, delicious food, a comfy couch, and a universal remote. He learned it from advertising, and, like many of us, accepted it without question. But in the end, he realizes that those images of happiness were just that, images, purely superficial. And although they may look good on the outside, they don't fill what's inside. He discovered that perhaps true fulfillment isn't in that modern, comfortable, individualistic life, but in something a little more essential, where maybe there isn't as much self-sufficiency, but there is community, where there are meaningful relationships, where difficulties may exist, but so does purpose, where the food may not be as tasty, but there will be health. It's not about RJ and the others returning completely to the forest, or living as hunter-gatherers, or giving up technology, processed food, or every modern comfort. That's no longer viable. The world has already changed, and they, just like us, already live in a new reality. And with this, what I'm trying to say is that modernity also brings real benefits. It makes life more practical, safer, and more efficient. The problem isn't progress itself, in my view, but that by focusing so much on what's easy, convenient, and fast, we sometimes forget what's essential, the things we truly need to be well: meaningful, deep relationships, community bonds, purpose, fresh air, nature, silence, movement, contact with the earth and with others. RJ and his group will have to find balance, a hybrid way of living, and that's what we're called to do as well. Not to reject the modern world entirely, of course not, but also not to let it consume us completely. We must learn to make use of its benefits without forgetting what truly matters most. Thanks for staying until the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with a friend who you think might enjoy it. And you and I'll see you in the next one.